Today we're going to look at how to make a Poison and Rot build, and it's going to satisfy the big bonk in some of you because we're going to be using two colossal axes. A member of my Discord, Danny, has been hounding me to make a sort of Eivor build, and she gave me her entire build, which is really awesome, but I wanted to make it with a twist, and then I was like, you know what, I never made a Rot build, so might as well do it. So forgive me, Danny, but I will make an Eivor build eventually. So we're going to dual wield two Rotten Greataxes. And now you're gonna say, well, Slayer, why aren't you using weapons that are better at applying status effects? And my response to that is that this is a big bonk build. This is supposed to be a barbarian, so we're not gonna do that. We're sticking to the theme. But because we're going to be using two status effects, it'll be actually really good since we can't actually increase Rot buildup with any affinity. It's so stupid. The only way you can increase it obviously is by leveling up your weapon, but once it gets to plus 25, there's nothing else you can really do except use grease. But I like to stay away from consumables because it's kind of just annoying to play with, but that's just me. So now we have the added benefit of having really high poison buildup and having some rot buildup. So you have two status effects that will eat away at an opponent's health. For this, I'm going to use a barbaric roar on the offhand axe so that you can pop that before going into a fight. And then in our main hand, we're going to be using a lion's claw, because I just have been dying to use this Ash of War in a build. I think I finally found the build to do it with. Now for the affinity of both of these Ashes of War and on both of these weapons, you want to put poison. And as you see, oddly enough, the axes will actually scale with dexterity and not arcane. But I'll talk about the stats a little bit later. So this build is going to be really good damage-wise. If you like to go in, take like 3/4 of your enemy's health off or just kill them in one hit, then this is a build for you. As I said, it is a big bonk build. So you are getting that slowness factor, sure, but you're putting out a lot of damage. And it's going to really suck out a lot of endurance from your character. So we're going to mitigate that with the Turtle Talisman. Now the only drawback, as you can probably already tell, is one, these axes aren't super long, and just the slow moveset, of course. And we don't have a lot of poise. I think my character had 20 with all the armor I had on with both of the axes. So our poise isn't super great, but what I like about Lion's Claw, the Ash of War, is that when you're in the movement, you won't get knocked out of it. Because as you'll see in my fight against Margit, he actually hit me and it didn't do nothing. I was still able to follow through with the movement and get the damage. I really like the axes moveset, especially when you're on a horse and you do the charged R2. It'll actually like throw the enemy up in the air, which is really cool. So for the stats, as I mentioned, it is going to be arcane, but also dexterity based. So our main damage type, because our affinity scales better with dexterity, we're going to go to the soft cap of dexterity, which is 55. Our health will be at 50 because it is a barbarian and I want a lot of health. We're gonna need a 30 endurance, and honestly, if you don't mind having lower health, you could definitely like do 45 vigor and 35 endurance, which could help a lot if you don't want to use the Turtle Talisman. For mine, we don't need a lot of it, so don't worry about it. And of course, we need 30 strength to be able to use those axes. Now if you want to not spend that many points in strength, you can actually dual wield the axes and just have 15 strength, which will bump it up to 30. But I think this build is mostly effective when you dual wield and when you power stance the jump attack. So because of that, of course, at level 150 and even at level 125, we can't hit any of the level cap with arcane, but because we're not using arcane specifically to do damage scaling, and it's only for the build-up, because again our affinity is poison, then you don't need that much in it. I just spent the rest of my points in there, so I have it at 34. But that's how the build works. It's actually pretty fun, and I feel like I say this about every build, but every time I build something, I'm like, oh my gosh, I made a build from scratch and it actually works. I'm kind of amazed that what I just theorized in my brain actually works in the game. But yeah, if you like playing a barbarian type of character, you'll definitely love this, and you have the added bonus of having two status effects, which will just eat away at enemies' health bars. And I like to judge a build really by how well I do against Commander O'Neill, because he's a pretty tough cookie and he can tank a lot of damage, and this was one of the easiest fights against him I've had, if that means anything. So you know the drill, everyone, and now that you know how the build works, I'll show you where to get everything that you need to make it. For the fashion for this character, it's pretty obvious we'll be using the Rotten armor set. Now, if you don't know how to get this set, you can farm this set off the Rotten Duelist, and I show the exact locations of all the weapons and the two variations of the set, because there's a red one and a white one. So I'll link the video if you need the exact locations. So these axes are found in the liturgical town of Ordina. In the back to the left of the entire building, you can go around it, and the duelist will just be standing there, and you can get that axe from him. And again, if you don't know exactly where that is, it's pretty endgame because it's in a secret area. I do show how to get there in that video. Now, the talismans are the only other thing we'll need for this build. So the first one is the Great Jar's Arsenal, because it increases our equip load, and all of these pieces are pretty freaking heavy for like no reason. Like this is 6.4, 7, 5, and then 20 for each of these axes. So if you want a medium load, if you don't want a fat roll, you will definitely need to use this. For this talisman, you need to defeat 3 NPCs, and it's in the Dragon Burrow area. So basically, you actually have to go through Siofra River, and then eventually when you get to the very end of it, you'll find an elevator. You'll need a stone sword key to use it, and the elevator will bring you to that area, and it's the only way you can get there. Now, you can see it from other areas in Kayla that you can access pretty early on, but you actually cannot get there unless you go through Siofra River. For the green turtle talisman, which raises stamina recovery speed, which we'll need a lot for this build, you can find it early on in Limgrave in Summon Water Village. You'll want to make your way through these runes here, and there will be turtles all over the place. And again, you'll need a stone sword key to unlock the fog wall and loot the talisman from the chest. The Kindred of Rot Exaltation talisman is very important because it increases your attack power when you either cause poisoning or rot, or you're poisoned, or you have scarlet rot yourself. So it's going to be really good in those dungeons, caves, or areas where there's a lot of enemies that poison or cause scarlet rot. So you can find this in the Seedwater Cave underneath the manor area. So it's kind of like right here, and you have to go through Seedwater River. So right here, once you get to the Altus Plateau, you want to come up here, go through these runes, and then you'll have access to the part here underneath. And then you just make your way here. And again, you'll need more stone sword keys to unlock the fog wall to be able to get into that dungeon and then defeat the boss, and you'll get the talisman. Now, the last talisman we'll be using is the Roar Medallion, which enhances a roar attack, which is what we're using as our main buff for this build. So it increases the damage you will do with that buff on by 15%, because roars in general are pretty freaking bad. Now, to find this, you want to make your way here right at the start of the game to the Limgrave tunnels, and you want to make your way down there and fight the boss, which is a troll, and it's pretty easy to defeat, and he'll drop that talisman. So that's it. You should have everything that you need. This was a pretty quick one because we have no incantations and all that other stuff to look for. So I hope you'll enjoy this build, and if you want more builds like these, there are plenty more on my channel. So have yourself a wonderful day, and I'll see you all very soon.